Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the TAG Infrastructure, our first virtual meeting. My name is Steve Laufersweiler, and I'm the chairman of the TAG Infrastructure Society. For those of you who don't know who we are, our mission is this. We try to support Georgia companies that happen to have the vertical of infrastructure, hence the name, right? So that includes data centers, network providers, power companies, transportation companies, and we do that through events. So we have live events, and we show through panel discussions and through other events how technology can support these companies. Well, as you might have heard, we're not doing face-to-face anymore, so we're attempting our first virtual event. Same format. We've got some very high-powered CIOs as panelists. We're going to have a kind of a roundtable panel discussion, and we're calling it Normal 2.0. In other words, what's going to happen next? There was a pandemic. We're still in the middle of it. We're trying to figure out how best to weather this storm and what's going to happen on the other side. So we're very fortunate to have some great panelists today who've experienced this and have some suggestions about how to use technology and how to get through this and how to benefit and thrive from it. And so hopefully you'll benefit from that because they're going to have firsthand experience of actually what they've done, maybe some mistakes they've made, maybe some things that they would have done different, but hopefully you'll benefit from that. So the first thing I'm going to do, or the next thing I'm going to do, is introduce our moderator. We're very fortunate to have Jason James, who goes by JJ. I know a lot of you people know JJ. JJ's on our executive advisory board. Just a quick bio for JJ. JO is the CIO of Net Health, former CIO of Optima. You might know him from that. JJ's been in the industry for probably 20 plus years, and he has spent that time helping IT companies modernize. Jason is a frequent speaker. You've seen him around town and on these panels speaking. He's a contributor to IT publications. And I'll tell you what, I think Jason, in my opinion, is a bit of a futurist because before this all happened, JJ was a proponent and a strong advocate of using technology to enable people to work from home. So this was not new for him. He pretty much hit the ground running. And I think he can share some tools that he's used that we might be able to benefit from. So I think that covers it all. And at this time, I will turn it over to JJ.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you for the great introduction. It's amazing what people will say if you pay them $50 before you come out. So thank you for that, Steve. I'll pay you the $50 later. I'm really excited about what we're going to talk about because what we're going to talk about is really the new norm. We are, frankly, probably all sick of hearing that term, the new norm, but it's happening, right? So if you look at what has happened in terms of global pandemic, it has created the largest societal shift since World War II, way more disruptive than 9/11. So if you look at 9/11, as terrible as that was, air travel stopped for 4 days. Fast forward ahead to what has happened over the last week, 8 weeks, and air travel's dropped by 90%. They had the CEO of Hartsfield on the local news probably about 3 weeks ago. And for those of you who don't know, the Atlanta airport's the busiest airport in the world in terms of volume. They do not predict that levels will return to a pre-COVID level for 3 to 5 years. Let that set in. So I'm a CIO of Net Health. Net Health's headquartered in Pittsburgh. I live here in Atlanta. I'm on planes a lot. Many of you are probably on planes a lot. I haven't flown for the last 8 weeks. Many of you probably haven't. But what we're going to face as we go into this evolving world is that, and we'll talk to our panelists, the question is, what will the new norm be in the future versus what it was in the past? And so we've got some great panelists today. I am not going to do an introduction. I'm going to let them introduce themselves. I'm going to give them a brief introduction, but no one knows them better than they do. And we want to hear their story, right? We want to hear what they've been doing. And so if you can just talk about, your role or your industry, and we'll start there, and then we'll go into the conversation. We want to keep this light. We want to keep this fun. This is relevant to everybody. It doesn't matter what aspect that you're working in. Chances are, if you've been fortunate enough, you've been working from home the last 8 weeks. So let's hear from the experts and what they're seeing. So Tim, let's start with you, sir.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jason. I am Tim Langan. I'm Regional Vice President for Flexential Data Centers. Some of y'all will remember us as Peak 10 in this market a few years ago. So we're a nationwide data center and cloud managed services provider. And our business has obviously definitely been impacted. We're all about keeping our customers online. Mission critical type of applications are the kind of things that reside in Flexential data centers. So it's been all about our customers, and to maintain that mission critical uptime, you've got to have the staff there at the data center safe. So the biggest shift in our business was sending everybody home except for the mission critical operations employees that keep these network of 40 data centers online and online always. So that's been it. But at Flexential, I'm Regional Vice President for the Southeast. So we've got data centers spread across the Southeast, and it's been a little bit of business as usual and a little bit of business unlike we've ever done before.
Right. Well, thank you, Tim, and thank your teams for keeping us up and running, which people don't realize. The cloud has to live somewhere. And where the cloud lives in many cases is exactly what Flexential does and keeps us running. Another aspect that we'll talk about, the impact of business, but an organization that keeps us moving and hopefully will keep us moving when this returns to normal. Reggie, let's get an introduction from you and, how it's been impacting you guys from a high-level perspective.
Yeah, thank you, JJ. So I'm Reggie McNeill, Senior Vice President for Infrastructure Services globally for BCD Travel. And yes, we are one of those industries that's been severely impacted with this pandemic over the last couple of months now. We started to see it evolve out of Asia Pacific around the November-December timeframe. And then from there, it just escalated. So with that, we've had to shift our business model, because we do have a number of our clients that do continue to travel. There are some very urgent need to be on site. We do travel for some of the large corporations that have miners out into some of the remote areas of the world to mine precious minerals, also out to deep parts of the ocean. So that type of travel continues today. But the general, as JJ mentioned before, severely impacted, way beyond now it's beyond the 90% impact for travel. And but we're hoping that it will have a faster turnaround than what they're predicting. Based here in Atlanta, and as someone who normally travels a lot, 15 plus international trips a year, I've been pretty much grounded for the last 8 weeks. So it's even impacting us as a travel company.
Well, Reggie, we're glad to have you. We're glad to have you here today. For those of you that don't know, sports, of course, have been canceled. Several of us are wearing jerseys. So I have a jersey on from my undergrad alma mater, Oregon State. Reggie has what I believe to be a Redskins jersey on. So, Richard, we're going to pass it on to you. Let's tell us about yourself, what you're doing. And I can't quite see your jersey, so I think I know what it is. And for an organization based in Pittsburgh, I'm pretty sure I know what it is, but I'll let you give the introduction.
Sure. I think it's pretty obvious right there. I can't say that I'm an avid fan, but nonetheless, my wife's family's from Pittsburgh, so it kind of works out. Know the area quite well. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Richard Donovan. I oversee IT infrastructure, security, and support for Conisus. Conisus is a biopharmaceutical communications company. Sounds like a very lofty concept and term, and most people don't understand what that market is, and it's kind of a niche market. It's between the pharmaceutical companies and the doctors, the medical community. And so we actually help get the pharmaceutical information for cancer medications, get that information out to the medical community and vice versa. And so we kind of act as a go-between, providing professional services. With those professional services, we actually do quite a bit of traveling. Our company is heavily based, event-based services. And so there's a lot of face-to-face and interpersonal meetings that take place throughout the year, hundreds and hundreds of events. Those events have all gone virtual for the most part right now, and everyone's been grounded. I will say that we've been fortunate over the last couple months to not have that way too heavily on us. It has hurt some of our clients, I think, a little bit just because of the nature of their business and how much they travel. But by and large, it has not hurt us as much because we've been able to be flexible and go virtual for the majority of everything that we've got. Yeah, thankfully, around the time that all of this took place, we were actually in transition to our new office space that is still being constructed. And we were actually forced to be full-time remote during that time anyway. So it kind of worked out nevertheless.
Great. We did not plan it that he would wear a Pittsburgh Steelers jersey and I would be representing a company headquartered in Pittsburgh, but it worked out. So I appreciate that. When we look at really what's happened, every great crisis, every great societal shift deserves a great moniker, right? So the last economic downturn in this country was labeled the Great Recession. This one, which, believe it or not, we're already in a recession, is that what we're faced with now is the naming convention, and people are still debating it, but what it's being called now is the Great Lockdown. This idea that economies, businesses, us as individuals, students, we're in a lockdown mode, right? It's very different than any other crisis we faced as a society. If we look back the last time to such a massive global pandemic, that would have been 1918, the Great Flu. I doubt there's anyone in IT still left from 1918. If so, they're probably COBOL programmers, and they're probably helping with unemployment benefits right now. But right now we're faced with what is the Great Lockdown. And so, again, each of these gentlemen talked about what the Great Lockdown meant for their organization. But let's talk about what maybe the opportunities are for your organization as we come out of the Great Lockdown. And Reggie, I'm going to start with you.
Okay. So I think some of the opportunities as we come out of the lockdown is new ways of doing business. And even before, as I mentioned before, as a heavy traveler, so I started to notice in some of the hotel space where they were having more of the self-service type check-in models, even at the full service chains that you normally wouldn't see that type of service at. So I think as we continue to evolve or come out of this lockdown, this COVID situation, we'll start to see more self-service capabilities and offering from our clients, particularly in the hotel space, the car rental, these places where you can get by with some touchless service that's enhanced by technology capabilities. So I expect to see more investments in those spaces and driving new capabilities, new streams of revenue for these companies.
Excellent. So Tim, what about your perspective, right? You deal in data when you think about it, right? What houses data? Where does data live? Who touches that data? And in a lot of cases, your teams have been frontline workers, right? First responders in a way. And it's first responders in a sense of who maintains that data, who is maintaining and touching those systems. If I think about how I even use within my own organization, co-located data centers, right? They're in different cities. I'm not sending or dispatching a technician there. I'm relying on people like you. And so your teams become these sort of digital first responders. So can you talk about, as being a digital first responders and coming out post-COVID, what do you see the opportunities in the new world for your organization?
Well, it's interesting. We've had kind of a couple of different types of organizations that rely on these sort of mission critical data center services that we're offering. Some that were happy to offload a lot of that work and let our teams at the site handle that for them, and others that really wanted to keep doing it. And they were the people that, the security at the front of the campus, would know them by name when they came up because they were there so often. And now they're finally relying on our teams. So they're joining the other half of the customer base or more that was very happy to just let us, handle a lot of mundane things for them, but are very mission critical. So we've seen a big shift of just relying on our people. One of the reasons is they want us to do it. We're also limiting how many people can come in the building at one time with sort of emergency procedures that are in place right now. But it has been interesting to see those people who were certain that they had to do this certain level of work to maintain their infrastructure, to do the kinds of changes and modifications that happen regularly in IT world. And they were convinced their team was the ones who had to do them based on their knowledge, their history, are now experiencing our teams doing it for them, and very successfully. So we always take some pride if at one of our big facilities, there's a big parking lot and very few cars in it in a given day, right? That tells us we're doing something right. And of course, that has been the case throughout this lockdown. And so I think that's going to be a change that's probably not going to bounce back all the way to the way it was pre-COVID, that people have seen the light and they realize that they don't have to be doing all those manual kind of things. So that's one of the changes for sure.
Excellent. That's fantastic, Tim. And again, thank you and your team for what you're doing. So Richard, let's get your perspective, right? Your industry and how it changes, and it may be everything from, how you're serving clients to your own internal teams. What is your perspective there?
Sure. I would have to say that I think the biggest outcome positively that I think we'll get out of this change going forward is probably going to be more so attributed internally to the company as opposed to client-driven interactions in business. And I say that because with the medical community, with doctors, nurses, and so forth that are out there, they're out in the mix right now anyway. They're out there. They don't have the luxury of doing their job like what we're doing right now, and like most of us have been able to successfully and thankfully do over the last couple of months. And so with that being said, they're, though they are taking the correct precautions and everyone's trying to be as healthy and safe as possible during this time, they're right there in the front lines with it. So when it comes down to getting the communication out to them about how maybe certain medicines may help the patient, that's going to have to come whatever way they can get it. So if that's on site, I don't see that changing for us. In the last 20 plus years that we've been around, this has been pretty much the staple. I will say that I do think that going forward, there is a small percentage, I do believe, that will change or transition into more virtual aspect, only because it has been successful so far. It's been forced to be successful, whether someone wanted to or not. There have been challenges through that. Anyone that's kind of worked in the medical field knows that, whether they've worked in a hospital or they're actually in a medical field, knows that your main focus is patient. Your main focus is helping someone. It's not technology. Technology is kind of just, a necessary evil, so to speak, in many cases. My mom was a nurse for 40 years, and so I see that even still today. She's retired, but nonetheless, I still see some of those challenges today because the focus has been patient-driven. And so reshifting that focus, I think as time changes, it will actually become more normal, and that percentage may increase. But But by and large, I don't really see a whole lot of our business model changing just because of that.
Yeah, and it's different from every industry, right? I think if you look at it, there are a lot of changes that happen externally with how we deal with our clients, and there's changes that happen internally with how we deal with our culture. Make no mistake, the largest impact to digital transformation will be COVID-19. It won't be strategies by boards. It won't be strategies by the CIO. It will be driven by this pandemic. And what we're seeing now are companies that are able to evolve and companies that are having a hard time evolving. If you look at Disney, Disney is one of the most profitable brands in the world. They just published their results for the last quarter, 91% drop in profit. Nobody's going to movies. Shows aren't being created. Someone as king as Disney is in so many fields have been heavily impacted. Nobody planned for global pandemic, right? If they had it as part of their business continuity, it was simply a line item. What we're seeing now are people actually adapting other forms of technologies, other tools to make them apparent and to make them relevant. And what happens is it ultimately also changes how we interact with people. We talk to our own board, and a great question came in. It's like, some IT executives are appalled that IT salespeople are trying to contact him during this time. Frankly, I'm always appalled when they try to contact me. I just don't talk. But for that matter, it's like there's this feeling that the last thing you want is to have a vendor from a sales perspective try to push whatever their needs are and how to interact with you, right? And it's not to say that there aren't great partners out there. And there's a big difference between vendor and partner, right? Mm-hmm. And so how do you remain receptive while you're on a tool, that's virtual and you're not in the office and you're not picking up the phone? How have vendors met your needs that could possibly help you save time, help you save money? How are you interacting with them? Are you going to interact with them or tell them to hit the bricks? And if so, how can they be a better partner? And Tim, because you're in a leadership position where you are a lot more customer centric than some of us, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, I would say this is I get sold to, and I lead some sales teams that are responsible for our customers too. And it's always been important to, in that world, to make the outreach about the person you're calling, and not about yourself. It's significantly more important now. So it was always bad form when you could tell someone didn't really know your business when they reached out to you. It's like awful now, right? It's so bad when someone doesn't know your business, doesn't know how you've been impacted by the current environment. And so you got to be concerned about the person. You got to be concerned truly about their business, more so than ever. You always should have been someone who represented a product or a service to technology buyers, but you really have to know somebody's business now. You got to know something about them. You got to know something about their organization, and how you legitimately can help them with a struggle, that they may be having right now. And it may be a struggle that is acutely impacting them in the COVID world that maybe wasn't impacting them as much before, and certain things that you just know wouldn't be a priority in this current environment, and just got to know the difference. Because it's painful, some of the way that I'm being outreached to from some sellers at the moment, and then the good ones know your business and actually can be of a help right now too, right? I mean, legitimately, a seller should be legitimately helping somebody right now more than they've ever done. And it's obvious when it's about them.
Yeah. And what Tim talks about ultimately is about building a partnership. You know, I know as a CIO myself, the last thing I want is a salesperson to show up the last few days of the quarter trying to close a deal. It's already lost it. He or she already has, right? That relationship starts way ahead of time. Great advice. Reggie, let's go to you. How does somebody in that kind of role partner with you? What are you looking for?
Yeah, I think Tim hit it right on the nail on the head. And that is, you got vendors and then you got strategic partners, right? And in our business, it's really about building that relationship over time with those strategic partners who, one, understand your business, number two, understand your needs, and understand how their products or services can enable you to receive a competitive advantage. Those are the ones that we work with over the years, and the ones that don't fit into that model, we've kind of pushed to the side, but we constantly get the calls like everyone else, particularly when it's, end of year, quarter end sales, things like that. But even though some of those may be enticing, it's really about that long-term relationship that we look to build with our strategic partners. And I can give an example just in this past several weeks. When I have conversations with my strategic partners, they immediately acknowledge and understand that the travel industry has been severely impacted. So from that perspective, they start thinking and talking about what are the things that they can do, whether it be creative financing, delay, invoice payments, things of that nature. What can they do to really help burden or ease that burden for us being in the travel industry? And those are the true strategic partners that we like to continue our alignment with. And for those that don't really understand that or don't talk that language, particularly during this critical time, then it really kind of shows where their true motives are. And we have them global. We have global suppliers. We have regional suppliers. And in some markets, we really have no choice but to deal with the local suppliers. And in that case, it's a totally different animal when you're dealing with people who almost have a monopoly in certain markets. So it's a totally different conversation there. But generally speaking, I'm like others, we're really getting bombarded with sales calls, and I kind of on the fence about, entertaining any kind of new calls and things like that. I do have one positive example that came from that, and it goes back to around the 2008 timeframe when we had the housing market downturn and the regional U.S. market meltdown there. Prior to that, we had completed a RFP for a major software purchase that we was required to have to meet some regulatory requirements. So, of course, when that happened, we put it on the shelf and we said, hey, we'll pick it up once this is all said and done. When the economy started to turn around and things kind of start to pick up. So when our strategic partner said, hey, we understand the situation. However, we have a fire sale going on some of our software. So we were like, okay, we thought it was just another, small shave off of discounts in order to get the deal done. But they understood, our needs, what our needs were, and they came to the table with a very aggressive package, so aggressive that I really couldn't ignore it. I had to really flag it up to the poll, to the CFO, some of our other executives to say, hey, take a look at this. I know it's not the optimal time to be spending money. We need to kind of really preserve our cash flow and protect our bottom lines. But hey, if you look at these discounts, and if you look at the ROI and where we can, leverage these savings over the lifetime of this software, it could be pretty substantial. And it came to the point where they agreed to move forward with the purchase. I was quite surprised, but it just goes to show you when you have a strategic partner who understands your situation and can really come to the table with some creative solutions, that's a true strategic partner. And I'm really happy to say we still have that partner today. So when you have people like that in your corner during these tough times, it kind of makes our job a little easier.
No, that's fantastic. And I, too, have seen these deep discounts that people have been presenting, and, they've had to as well, right? Their businesses have been impacted. Those that are in a position of strong financial power will I think, see some really big discounts probably through the end of the year, if not into 2021. Richard, you and I are in sort of similar industries, right? Both healthcare based, both companies serving healthcare. I know for us, COVID-19 is focused us, right? You know, if we look at how much telehealth we have brought into our product lines way ahead of schedule, other kind of features, it has driven us to focus even more. Sort of bouncing off of what Reggie was saying, you know, while we're focused and trying to deliver all this new functionality and trying to support mission critical systems, which is healthcare, and those that support healthcare, is there just one thing that just incredibly pisses you off the way a salesperson might approach something or send something? You know, I'll give a prime example. I have gotten, at least from one vendor, 3 or 4 passive aggressive messages where like, I guess you don't have time to talk. I'm like, what are you, breaking up with me like an old girlfriend? Who does this, right? And so it seems to be like this weird passive aggressive. So I want to get your take because we're in similar industries. Is there just something from a sales perspective to a tech leader that just irritates the crap out of you?
Sure. And for those that don't know me, I'll say it oftentimes takes a lot to really get me riled up like that. But I can give you a good example of at least one good time. No company names mentioned here, of course, but
you can. I'm just saying.
No, I won't. But nonetheless, I don't even have to name names. But I bet if I were to tell you the scenario, anyone here, they would probably go, "Oh, it was this company." Yeah, it seemed to be the normal there for a good year and a half. It was this robo-dialing event and rapid fire email event where, you know, every 5 minutes or 15 minutes or whatever, it was like you're getting spammed, but it was by 5, 6, 7 different people via email, phone call, calling the front desk, asking for you, calling C-level executives, different people around the company, just trying to fish you out. And they weren't scammers. At least it didn't seem like they should have been, but they had the same tactics, strangely enough. And after several, times, of course, I say several loosely, I mean, dozens of times of, declining, even going into spam filters and putting blocks on their domain, even as far as that had to go, didn't hold them off. Maybe it did for a few months that they found another subdomain to start sending emails from, and sending you offers or, hey, let's talk or let's do this. I actually scheduled a phone call with this company, and another C-level executive actually was there with me to speak with them, and we treated it professionally. We said, let's sit down and let's talk. And so we got on the phone, and I asked for like 5 or 6 different people that had emailed out to attend this call as well. And we just put it down. We said, listen, officially, this is the last time we're telling you, don't reach out anymore. It had just burned the bridge so bad up front. But that was a few years ago. Thankfully, I don't have that issue now, but that has occurred. I don't know if it's occurred for any of you guys, but it's kind of obnoxious.
So what Richard was talking about was the fact is, if you're not a good partner, like Reggie mentioned, or like Tim mentioned, we will use technology to block you. Richard went as so far to actually sit down and have a meeting with them. I won't go that far. I'll just make sure your emails never arrive at our office. I'll make sure of that. So again, we encourage everybody to be a partner. And as you build partnerships, you have to understand that the industries we work in have been affected differently. Make no mistake, some people are impacted financially much more than other industries. Again, we talked about Disney and a 91% profit hit, right? We talk about other organizations like AWS. This played to every strength that AWS had, right? Strong logistics background, cloud computing, even healthcare delivery. They bought a company a few years ago, or maybe last year, called PillPack. And the idea is they can send prescriptions to your home very simply. So as terrible as this crisis was, every bit of this crisis really was reflected in the diversification of AWS and how they could overcome that and how Amazon could overcome that. But if we look at COVID-19 and how it's devastating numbers of industries, we talked about travel, there's retail, restaurants, office spaces. How can technology solve that, right? So, Tim, let's start with you, right? The idea is industries are impacted. What is the saving grace of technology, and how can that help them overcome this and create opportunities as we come out of this?
Two thoughts, and we're predicting, some things that we'll see how they play out too, right? Two areas is just sort of in efficiencies. So a little bit what I talked about before, companies are being more efficient in technology now and leaning on others, like somebody like ourselves that can help them where their technology resides. The other is that we're going to see if this trend plays out, but cash may very well be in the new economy. Cash may be king, and the ability to OpEx a little more of your IT spend in an infrastructure as a service, even if you're not the type of company who's got your technology ready to, to run in the Microsoft or AWS cloud or something like that, and you don't have the type of architecture that would, that is ideal for that. Just that area in between owning your own gear and doing co-location and that kind of thing, and the hyperscale clouds, there's a wide middle there of where infrastructure as a service could help somebody. So, I know it just sort of depends on how companies are financed, but we're going to see if the trend plays out. We suspect it will, where capital will become, maybe more scarce for companies, and being able to OpEx some of their IT spend. So again, that's where I think technology may end up helping the bottom line. You need the technology. You can become more efficient. Companies have become more efficient in some ways already. And then we'll see how they finance the technology that, creates those efficiencies to see if it plays out like we think it may. And we're happy whichever way, however somebody wants to deploy in a kind of hybrid mode or not. We're comfortable either way, but we're preparing ourselves for an uptick in infrastructure as a service, which we think will help companies' bottom lines, which is going to be really important.
Great. Crisis, what Tim mentioned, will either hone an industry or dull it. It's much like a knife, right? If you take the right kind of rock, or either they're sharpens or dulls. And so, Richard, from your perspective, what are those technologies that can sharpen an industry, make them more competitive as we create opportunities coming out of this?
Sure. And I'll say, just through this time, what I've noticed is the retail industry, the things that have changed. We're not just talking about the food industry at that perspective. I mean, we've all obviously seen that, grocery stores automating, the delivery services, or, you have scheduling. I mean, that's been going on for a while across the board, but it hasn't been as rampant. There's just been kind of a cult following to some degree, or, a lot of people that are just running out of time use it as a leisurely service. But we're starting to see dependency upon those kinds of services, but it's extending out beyond food, whether it be, already prepared meals or grocery stores. We're actually seeing it within the retail space now. I'll tell you some of the stores that are local to me. I didn't even realize they had such a thing as curbside pickup. And I was like, when did they get that? And just found out that they slammed it into place in the last few weeks, which is huge. It's huge for them. They had to do something. It makes you ask, kind of the question out loud, well, what was holding them back? If now we're in a time frame or a situation where, money could be scarce for some companies, revenues could be scarce just due to the fact of people not being able to get out and spend it at their companies. What held them back from leveraging that avenue? It could be another avenue, but I think that's going to be the next big thing. Of course, is the delivery services that's been, again, going on. Amazon has pretty much pioneered that greatly, but just about every service and store around me here now has some sort of local pickup, even if it's a mom and pop shop, which again, I think is huge because it allows that extra avenue of people to be able to get out and get the product.
Absolutely. And it creates new opportunities for underserved demographics, right? I think about the elderly and, how many of those that can drive may not have maybe the strength, right? They might be on a walker, and while they can drive to the store, it might be very difficult for them to actually shop in a very large retailer. And that ability to pull up and have it put in your car, or that ability to have it brought to your house, enables an interesting part of our demographic that's often been overlooked. And now at the same time, you think about young parents, right? How busy they are raising children. And the fact is, if you can shave off time and not go to the grocery store, or pull in and get your dry cleaning picked up or dropped down in your car, or have your groceries put in your back seat, or, pick up food, any kind of technology that enables us to have time back is profitable. Imagine if we still had to create memos, right? Email wiped that out. Email has been heavily deprecated in a lot of industries because of Slack and Teams. So any kind of technology that creates opportunity and give back time will ultimately be not only very popular, but very profitable. So Reggie, let's talk about, the travel industry, right? Technology has been the forefront of the travel industry for years. I have used a travel agent twice in my entire life, right? Because we have tools and technologies, we can look at places we've never been. We can look at hotel rooms and locations and plan that out. And so your industry has been at the forefront of technological innovation. And so as we pivot into really the new norm, and I hate to use that term, but I tell you what, let's call it AC, after COVID, right? So in 2020 AC, how is technology specifically to your industry going to evolve?
Yeah, I think it's going to really, that's a nice term there, JJ. But I really think it's going to continue to evolve in that digital format. And you're right, the travel industry has made significant amount of investments on that consumer side, that front end, how we interact with our clients, right? Better understanding what their travel needs are, what their travel patterns are, what are some of the additional services that they will like as part of their travel itineraries and packages. But what has changed the most, and it's mainly driven by demographics, is you hit it correctly, and that is, the interaction with the traditional agent, right? In some markets, that's still a very high demand that the clients, they like to pick up the phone. They like to talk to someone to talk them through the travel and give them options. And then you have another segment of the demographic will not pick up the phone to save their life, right? They want to interact with you through your mobile app or some type of digital platform. So that's where we're seeing the major shift over the last, 7 to 8 years or so. And that's kind of where we've been making a significant amount of investment, which is why our mobile app is the #1 app in the travel management space that you can download from the app store there, because of all these interactions that we built into that platform to really preempt some of the common questions that the traveler tends to have. So it's now serving them options before they think about where they would like to stay. If they like to have a city view of the cities, where here's the top hotels or that city that you're particularly traveling to have the better city views. And it gives them all these scoring. And then you also have the capability to crowdsource some of that information, where others who's traveled through that to that city can also make recommendations for you as well. So it's that type of interaction in that digital format that I think will continue to evolve. So as part of our digitalization strategy and plan over the last couple of years, really is now to start to deliver on those capabilities.
Fantastic. We're getting close to the end, and we're going to open up for question and answers, but I want to each touch with the panelists just for a brief moment and talk about big picture, massive changes. What do you see? And it doesn't have to be your industry, right? But when we talk about AC in an after COVID world, what are some big changes that you think are going to happen? And Richard, I'll start with you.
Yeah, not to knock Reggie's industry or company by no means, or the business there, but I definitely think travel, and we're seeing it already. I think travel is going to come down quite a bit, and it's just because of the proliferation of tools like this. And it's not that they just now started or came out, but in some cases they have. I mean, we're starting to see Facebook and some of the other players that have been kind of more in the residential market or the non-business market. They've been toying around with a tool or something like that to connect people, and it's been, depending on what phone platform you have, there's a video conferencing tool or something like that. But I think largely what you're going to start seeing is people are going to expect that this is kind of step one, and then travel step two. Maybe not for every industry. I know there are some other industries, sales, heavy sales industries, things like that, to where it depends again on the industry they're selling to. They're going to dictate that, whether they want a face-to-face. I know I've got several relatives that are in that kind of realm, that they may drive 6 hours one direction just to have a 30-minute meeting and then come back all the way home again. It could be a very big deal. It could land them something. It could be helpful, but ultimately, that's one thing that I've questioned for years, having been in a position where I was full-time remote from home for several years, every day consecutively. I questioned, why wasn't this normal years ago? I will say, not to say that I was on the forefront, but just having been in that, I was able to leverage that. But I definitely think travel will go down. Again, I think skepticism of to use kind of the mobile pickup or even, mobile delivery or even curbside pickup, those kinds of technologies. I think the skepticism of sickness is probably not going to go away for quite some time, if ever. And so while that is still rampant and still going on to some degree, even just being hyper conscious of what's going on around you, I think that's probably going to come up even more.
Yeah, I agree. I don't see handshakes coming back anytime soon. It's sort of like, the next time I'm in the office, I'm going to be like Doc Holliday from Tombstone and be like, forgive me if I don't shake hands, kind of thing. Tim, real quick, big picture predictions.
I have a hopeful prediction, and that some of the gridlock traffic in big cities like Atlanta is reduced. We've already seen a trend, the lightest traffic mornings in Atlanta, and I'm sure this is probably the same in places like Dallas, Fort Worth, and Washington, D.C. area, the other bad traffic metroplexes around the country. The lightest traffic mornings have been Monday and Friday mornings already because of teleworking. I think NCR will tell you that they have the fewest number of employees in their big Midtown showcase on Mondays and Fridays already. So I'm hoping that now squeezes in and we'll be able to add Tuesday and Thursday to that. So I'm hopeful prediction is that we see less gridlock traffic in some of our big cities after this. Even a 15% reduction would go a long way.
Right now, we're at a 76% reduction just in the city of Atlanta on an average daily census is what we're looking at. So a major drop. I know for me, I don't plan on commuting anytime soon, so I will relish that fact. So Reggie, got a few minutes left. Big picture.
Yeah, I think we'll see a big change in the commercial real estate market in addition to travel as well. Have to acknowledge that. But as people start to work remote more, the need for more commercial real estate office space, I think we'll see a major decline there. And with that, it will drive an increase of collaborative tools like Zoom, like Teams, and some of the others that are in the market space. So it will evolve a new skill sets that normally is not there in all the teams today. You can have some video specialists. I think when we deployed our Cisco telepresence solution about 2.5 years ago, we had some engineers that were specialized in that technology, but in some of the others, we didn't have dedicated resources to support, like Teams, Whereas today, I think as we start to increase that utilization, a new set of skills, may it be collaborative or in-user compute, those type skills will start to surface in the teams.
Sure. And, I think one of the things that comes out of this, and my big prediction is, the expansion of do-it-yourself and home offices, right? Move over laundry room, hello Zoom room. People are going to actually care what their home office looks like and what kind of camera they've got, what kind of connection they got, because face it, there'll be a wide swath of the office that never returns 8 to 5 Monday through Friday. I've been predicting that for years, way before pandemic. I've been planning on it for years, not in regards to pandemic, but it's coming, people, so be ready. We're going to go ahead and open it to questions. We have a couple of questions that have already been submitted, and I'm going to read them, and I'm going to just randomly, because we've only got a few minutes left, so I probably won't call on every panelist, but I'll call on a few panelists. So Josh Fisher said, how do you see offices evolving with regards to flex and meeting spaces with facilitating large web conference calls and reviewing docs in real time? So I'm just going to call the panelists, and so who wants to take that one? Actually, we're going to have Rebecca, if you want to unlock Josh, we can have him answer the question if we want to do that, or ask the question. While she's doing that and unlocking it, just somebody throw that out. How do you want to answer that question?
I think you're going to have some hunger from some people for a return to the office, right? That are missing the benefits of the social interaction and the collaboration that can come that you can't beat in person. But I think we've also found ways to get business done that prove it works. And so the tools that, like we said, were already there but are now being used at utilization rates we had never thought would hit in 2020 means that, things can be done, when and where doesn't matter as much anymore. And so, but I do think there'll be some return to that office, but I do think some of those tools and the things they're talking about there will continue steadily.
Yeah, work is no longer a place, but a thing, right? It's something you do. It's not somewhere you're at. So, I got another question on the line. Reggie stated, and this is from Sam. Reggie stated that BCD travel measures the economy coming back in Asia based on traffic congestion. Reggie, can you talk about that? I know sitting on some of my private equity calls, we see, life sort of restirring in Asia. And so what are you seeing? What does that mean for us?
Yeah, so when you probably hear on the news, they talk about the curve a lot and being on the tail, that curve, where when you look at it globally, Asia Pacific market, particularly China, Japan, Hong Kong, Sri Lanka, India, some of those markets are now on that tail end of COVID. So they're now starting to really ease up a lot of their restrictions and their march towards coming back to a sense of normalcy. We've seen some reports in some of the major cities in China and Japan. They're now starting to have gridlocks and traffic jams, all these things that they had before COVID, right, pre-COVID. So these are kind of signs that people are now starting to get back to some level of normalcy. While the air travel internationally is not nowhere near where it was before, we are starting to see some interregional or in-country travel really accelerate. So these are all some of the positive signs that I think globally the different economies and countries are looking for, and how Asia Pacific responds. And hopefully it just evolves and go from there into the European markets, into the UK market, and evolve over into the US, because that's kind of the curve that it went globally. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah, it's inspiring to see. I think we all look at it through hopeful optimism, cautious optimism, if you will, is that, definitely, we want to get back to a growing economy, but we don't want to basically make people sick. So that becomes,
definitely,
a really interesting thing to consider. So Another question coming in from Josh, flex spaces, what does that mean within the office, when we do come back in the office, which for some of us, it may not be a time. Richard, how do you see that changing for your industry? What do you see in terms of how you're going to set up the office?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it comes front and center right now just because we're, it's currently under construction and we'll be moving in hopefully in the next month and a half. But just had a call this morning kind of describing that or discussing that. And there's going to be an awful lot more of it, not just because of COVID. I mean, we could say, AC, 2020 AC or something like that. But it's just because, our workforce is being pushed out more remotely. We're hiring people all over the U.S. We've historically hired a lot in the Northeast just due to the client base that we have. And of course, headquarters is here, but now we're starting to see a little push toward the West. Some of the clients that we have a base out there as well. And so when we have employees flying in, they need someplace to work, someplace to kind of call home temporarily. And so that kind of begs the question, what's the point of flying in and how frequent does that look and what, really what does it mean? So I think it really is defined by the project or the need that's going on, locally. But I will say having been kind of sequestered like this in this fashion for several years prior to this place, getting back into an office is nice. It's nice to mingle with people and see people and kind of there's an element of interpersonal communication that's missing from this that I don't think this will ever replace, no matter how big it becomes.
Yeah, I agree. We've got time for one last question before I close it out, and it comes from Maria, and I'm going to pose it back to Reggie just based on how his workforce is set up. Have you noticed any effects on decrease or increase on your software development team's productivity, quality, or frequency?
No, in fact, our teams, particularly the development team, have been virtual for a number of years now. So working from home, working virtually is nothing new for them. So in fact, we've seen some increases because some of their sprints, they've now gone to much shorter development cycles. They've gone to shorter sprints. So they've actually been able to take this down window to increase some of their productivity and get some of that software development products out the door quicker. So we haven't seen any kind of decrease in our software development or the life cycle thereof of that.
Yeah, I would say based on our software development, the same thing, right? This idea is that we had offices throughout the United States. We had teams, some of them were remote, some of them weren't, but we pivoted instantly within less than 48 hours to move the entire workforce remote. What we found is that our productivity, we've been able to measure it, whether it's tickets or KPIs. It's more productive than it had been in the office. Part of it's probably because distractions are less. It will never replace the need for human interaction, but at the same time, what we see moving forward will change heavily. On behalf of the TAG Infrastructure Society, on behalf of Net Health and myself, on behalf of this board, I want to thank all the panelists for the job they did today. I want to thank Rebecca and Steve for assisting and helping making this a success. And I want to pause for a moment and encourage each of you to realize, often this term is used that we're all in the same boat. It's not true. There is almost 20% of our entire U.S. workforce out of work right now. We're all in the same storm, make no mistake. How you guide your teams and how you guide yourself through this storm is important. But it's also important to be mindful that others may not have it so lucky and that we will get through this. We will survive. This country and many of us have gone through a lot in the past. This is new to us, but this may not be the first crisis or pandemic we face in our lifetimes. Having technology that can be resilient, that can empower people to work from everywhere is important. Daryl, I'm going to hand it over to you, sir.
Okay, thanks very much, gentlemen. It was a great program, and we'd like to especially thank our sponsor. We have a society sponsor, the Cumberland Group, and because no one knows what's next, but everyone has to get ready for it, is their logo. You might check them out at cumberland.com. Thank you very much. I also like to remind everybody that the Infrastructure Group, or the Infrastructure Society, will be planning our regular events in the fall, like our Data Center Summit and our Sporting Clave competitions. So stay tuned to tagonline.org under events. And thank you very much. Stay safe out there. Don't forget there's a virtual happy hour this afternoon. Check the TAG website for more information. It starts at 5. And have a good day. Thanks for participating.